Special Interest Group. Today we're going to have Charlotte, Lovely, and Wilson speaking to us about the experience of the Climate and Environment Conference of the People experience. So this year they all attended in the Middle East, the Conference of the People, and Charlotte is the executive director of She for Earth. It is a youth-led organization that educates children about climate change, biodiversity conservation, and indigenous practices. She works with scientists, psychologists, and indigenous leaders to improve community resilience. She's a force of nature, a DIAS member, and the Black Hive Diaspora Fellow. And her email address is shelotx@gmail.com. Okay. Right. Just need to admit some people. So, yeah, Charlotte, she is the, just trying to navigate my screen. She is the, she has, I'm looking around on my screen, a Black Hive Diaspora Fellow, and she's also the director for She for Earth. So she will be hosting the event today. And then we have Wilson Nokoma. He's an 18-year-old climate change advocate, a youth advocacy trainer with UNICEF in Zambia, an economics and statistical student with 4 years of experience in climate change advocacy and peer training. His email address is wilson2makaLashi@gmail.com. I will put the email addresses for you as well as the links to the profiles on LinkedIn into the chat once the webinar actually starts. And then we have Lovely. Lovely is a climate and gender justice activist. She's the founder of Rise Up Movement in Nigeria, the lead headship mentorship program at the Rise Up Movement Africa, and the CEO of Young Green Initiative. And Lovely's email is lovelynkwajia@gmail.com. So today we're going to speak about the experiences of Conference of the People. They're going to speak about why the Conference of the People is important, but most importantly, the experiences, what they had gone through when they were attending the Conference of the People, and some of their thoughts around what worked, what didn't work, and what really can be improved. So with this event, we hope to create some awareness about climate and environmental psychology, and we hope that we can engage with all people in universities and in the grassroots movement about the concerns for psychology. Right. So with that, I've done introductions, I've done housekeeping, I've requested people and noted that we will be recording because we would like to upload all our webinars onto our future YouTube channel. Charlotte, may I please request that you take over?
Thank you, Fatima, and hello, everyone. Thank you for coming in today for this webinar with our lovely participants. Some of my favorites in the continent because they're doing an incredible job for young people and the community when it comes to climate change. So I just want to call out to Wilson and Lovelyn. If you guys are comfortable, you can switch on your videos so we can start this up. Of course, that's if you guys are comfortable with it.
Charlotte. I'm saying
Hi,
that
Wilson.
bad. So if I turn on the, it might get worse.
Oh, that's great. Don't worry. So just want to start off, Wilson, with a very basic question. You know how interviews go. Um, just can you just tell us a little bit about or introduce us and our audience here what COP is, Conference of the Party is, and maybe a little bit snippet of what the purpose of Conference of the Party is.
All right, thank you. So in a nutshell, the Conference of Parties is where UN signatories come as and they do so by means of bringing in their as well as their. Oh, sorry, someone hear me? Can you hear me, Shannon?
We can hear you, Wilson. Can you do a little bit your voice to be more audible?
Okay. What's about now?
Yeah, it's fine.
I was saying the Conference of Parties is simply, in a nutshell, simply a conference where UN signatories come together to discuss issues, uh, the environment as well as climate change. So basically, each country comes up with their national determined contribution, of which they can present in negotiations at the Conference of Parties.
Oh, thank you for that. And I just noted one key thing. I think we're gonna at least dive into it as we go on. I don't know. I can't see Loveling here. Fatima, can you help me? Is she here? Or
Hi, Charlotte. I'm phoning her now. Hopefully, I can get a hold of her. She's not currently in our meeting. She might also be experiencing some challenges, but you can go ahead and start, Solange.
okay. Thank you. So Wilson, since you spoke about, you really introduced us to to the Conference of the Parties, and I suppose this happens in different countries each year, right?
Yeah, yes,
Wilson?
yes, it does. And last year,
Okay. Oh, amazing. Um, so now to start really with it is, as a young person, and like me, last year you were in Egypt attending COP27. Can you at least give us what a perspective of, or maybe your expectations of the event or the summit, and what were your experiences while you were engaging in the negotiation?
thank you very much for that question. So, as you already mentioned, last year I attended COP7 in Egypt, and it was my first ever COP. I've been wanting to attend the Conference of Parties for a really, really long time. So I was expecting a lot, I was expecting formal discussions, inclusivity, safety, as well as to meet like-minded people. And the last part of your question says, how was my experience in the negotiation? Well, it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be because many are the times where you would walk into a negotiation and they would not have space. They would not have space. So my party badge was party overflow. So many times you would find that they would uh, remove us from the negotiations to create more room for people who have party badges. So I think that was one of the downsides of me attending COP last year is that I could not participate fully or just sit the negotiations that were happening.
Wow. Um, that seems to have been quite an experience for you. And well, I share a similar experience, being a COP27, a different environment, and, you're expecting to be, but I mean, at least active, and there are so many restrictions, like, and the rooms, like you just mentioned, where you are removing rooms to create spaces for certain people or people with party badges, because those people at some point they are seen to be more important in terms of, like, all the delegation and negotiations. How did you receive that as a young person, especially coming from the global south, where you know that young people from the global south don't really have, like, the more opportunities to access these types of events?
Honestly, I was a bit disappointed, but was I surprised? No, I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised of such a thing happening. Where honestly, many other times where we are pushed to the sideline, where we're not given, the full engagement that we want. And so that was a bit disappointing, but I was not surprised by it. And I found other ways in which I could make sure that I still remain relevant to the negotiations. Of course, I did attend some negotiations, and they went pretty well. And I loved the fact that many of the, in negotiation you have chairs. A certain country has a certain place where they sit. So I was really happy that other African countries that I'm not even part of, that I'm not even from, would casually invite me to sit with them because there was not enough space, and I felt like that was kind of a good side of things. And I feel that as African youth, as young people in Africa, we really need to be given a lot more space to participate in this, not only at the COP, but even in our countries. Because if we start in our countries, um, it will be easier for us to even, be able to participate fully in the negotiations at COP. So if in countries when determining the national contributions, it's really important that countries involve young people so that when young people go there, they know their own national determined contributions, and they are well informed and are in the capacity to participate meaningfully in discussions in these negotiations.
Wow. Uh, Thank you for that. thank you for your in-depth dive into the experience. And I just picked on something interesting, something that keeps on coming, when you're talking about, the event is like the negotiations. And one thing, or a parallel that I find is that there seems to be a lot of sameness, or repetition in terms of uh, the people that participate in these spaces. Like, negotiations are heavy, and for young people that also goes into, like, there isn't enough space. And when you spoke of enough space, I thought of, like, also mentally, that as young people we are thrown into this chaos, and we don't have much space in our heads to process all that's going on. We are like living with the consequences, and now we're trying to deal, in terms of finding the solutions. And now we're also like trying to be young people. And like, how do you deal with that as a young person trying to, find the, you know, when you're working with the link of health? Because I know that you are an ambassador with UNESCO, and now you're also a young person, academics, climate change, and mental health. Like, how do you settle that in?
One way that I can say is that it's not easy, but I try to keep myself grounded and above all the things, above my advocacy, above me trying to make a difference. I feel like my mental health is the most important, and if it costs my mental well-being, it's not worth it, because if I'm not in a stable mental, if I'm not in a stable mental capacity, or no, that's not the right word to use. If I'm not in a stable, you know, mental wellness, I will not be able to make an impactful, an impactful, contribution to to everything that's happening. So I try my best to keep myself mentally well. I take mental health moments. I analyze what I've been doing. I try to avoid burnout, as well as try to be positive and realistic. The key thing that I found to be helpful is being realistic. There's only so much that I can do as a person, and as you've already mentioned, I have all these other aspects of my life that needs my attention. So I really try my best to stay focused, stay realistic, and as well as take my mental health seriously.
Yeah, that's important. You remind me of the adage, health is wealth, which is, kind of like, yeah, it's what we need. And it's often missing sometimes. And going back to, the negotiations, we actually, the results of COP28, COP27 last year in August, there wasn't much that happened or that came off in terms of like health. There isn't enough conversation around climate change, and mitigation, adaptation, resilience, and health in most of these important summits. What do you think that is? And what do you think should be done?
Thank you for that question. And honestly, I feel like more still needs to be done. And it's high time that start thinking of a different way in which we can make more impact, because this is last year was the 27th COP, which means the 27th day that the COP has been running, and seeing that the results weren't as much expected, because many of the issues that were raised in previous COP, like the issue of loss and damage, was still, was still not met the last COP that we had. People were still protesting about it. People were still complaining about it. That just proves to say that there is little, little, little to no new, new solutions formed, as well as new improvements. So I feel like there's more to be done, and we need to start thinking of new ways in which there can be more impact aside from COP. Because COP, as according to my experience when I was there, it's kind of like a place where people just come to share ideas of what they want to do, as compared to what they are willing to do and start doing right there and then. So I feel like there's more to be done, and we need to think beyond the COP. The COP is not the only time when countries should start thinking of ideas and solutions to start to curb the climate change crisis. But I feel like there's more to be done. There's still a lot more to be done. And last year's COP was a testimony.
Yeah, I totally understand you. It's like, kind of like where people, a community, celebration where people come and celebrate, thinking right there and then. Last year's COP theme was the year of implementation, and you just spoke of there's something more to be done. And the year of implementation wasn't actually the year of implementation because nothing was actually done. Can you give us an example of what more could be done? What are the tangible things that could be done that actually cater for the people outside those spaces?
I'll just give one example. I feel like many countries as well as regions need to have more pre-COP meetings, conferences, and things like that to help prepare for the COP, as well as to get to know what they're dealing with more. What I'm saying is simply, for example, here in Zambia, we need to have many preparatory meetings and capacity building workshops, so that when COP is around the corner, or when it's at COP, we are better equipped to talk about things that we experience, and have an overview, in-depth knowledge about the exact problems that we're facing. And I feel like regional summits as well as conferences are really important, because mainly the same climate issues that you guys are dealing with in South Africa, Kenya, Zambia, Uganda, we kind of have similarities in the crisis that we have. So if these countries that are experiencing something similar can have a talk about solutions, as well as innovations on how they can curb those crises they have, it would be much more easier for countries who are experiencing similar crises to stand together at COP as well as to have an overall voice that will strike an impact instead of all of them trying to, bring out many different cases which have the same, basic solutions.
Yeah, that's true. We need, the kind of unity that those those countries, the rich countries, have. And I think that's one step forward that we need to take as, African nationals. And speaking of that, there's this question that I find interesting and also important, is that a lot of the times people of color go to all these important events or summits like COP26, Bonn, you remember the Stockholm Plus 50 last year, but they find that there's nothing about them is discussed, or anything that includes them is actually of priority in those spaces. COP27, I mean, Conference of the Parties being one of the main events that evoked so much awareness last year. And some of the young people that I know that have been attending Conference of the Parties for years are no longer interested in attending, which begs the question, do you think that strategies like boycotting high-level conferences like COP are effective in terms of communicating for equitable change?
Honestly, what I think is boycotting such conferences and events should be sort of the last option when every solution is exhausted. I feel there's potential in these events and meetings and conferences, and we just need to keep trying, make them more, more inclusive, more informative, and we should try to make it, more friendly to everybody. So I feel like boycotting should be like some sort of last resort when exhausted all the means to make these conferences, meetings, and events a suitable place.
Um, Exhaustion is quite one of the most used words amongst young people within the climate spaces. And oftentimes when this term is used, exhaustion, when it's used among young people, is often interlinked with mental health. And with mental health, how dynamic that is. There's like, so many uh, things within mental health. There's eco-anxiety, which is, more popular within Western young people and other young people within the climate spaces. So when you speak about exhaustion and you speak about the inaccessibility of certain rooms in the negotiations, and you speak of enough space for young people, especially global South young people. What are your, how do you feel about it? Like, what are your perspectives on the the lack of prioritization of health and mental health specifically in the agenda of COP, especially this year, the COP28 just got mental health. I think health as a, and as an umbrella term just got listed among the, top prioritized agenda items for November this year. So what's your perspective as a young person from Zambia?
Um, I feel like incorporating mental health is really, really, really important at COP because sometimes all the everything happening at COP can be somewhat overwhelming. And last year, as you've already mentioned, I also noted that there was a lack of, lack of um, programs that involved mental health, as well as just the prioritizing of. So I feel it's really important to incorporate mental health into the topics as well as discussions that are to be held at COP. And I feel like doing so is kind of like a step in the right direction, or kind of like a yeah, kind of like a steer in the right direction.
Yeah, the right direction. I hope COP28 does take the right direction this year. Um, Thank you, Wilson, for having this conversation, because these are really the conversations that we have. And, with all the commotion of everything that's going on with climate change, it's just chaotic, and there's so much that still needs to be done, especially around mental health, because when we're trying to foster resilience, we need that mental health grounding that you mentioned, that we need the grounding. And just to ask you one last question, which I don't know what the question is going to be, because I want it to be your outing question for my questions. But so yeah, how are you looking forward to COP28?
Um, Thank you for that question. I'm not even sure if I will attend COP28, and kind of like we've talked about. So I feel like these are some of the issues that we need to address. If young people cannot make it to COP, how are you incorporating their solutions and ideas into the discussions? Because even if I'll be at home, I need to have a, you know, I need my ideas to be heard. I need to make a contribution, and I need, to be given that space to be able to make a contribution. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm optimistic that if if I'm optimistic that this COP will, kind of be better than last COP. I don't know, but I just feel like it should be better than the last COP that we had last year. And I feel that the youth and the children and youth pavilion, first of all, that was at the last COP, should be more active, because last year I noticed that this youth and children pavilion was kind of like they set it up kind of like a playground where adults get to leave the young people where they and go discuss important stuff and leave the young people there. So I felt like we were a bit it was a bit of us being shoved to the corner than actually being given space. Not even many negotiators were coming to the youth and to the children and youth pavilion. So I hope that changes this year, and I hope that the children and youth pavilion at COP be a place of meaningful engagement, as well as a place where serious discussions are held between the young people and the negotiators who, you know, visit the pavilion.
Um, Thank you, Wilson, and thank you for touching on the part of the children and youth pavilion because it really felt like like sort of like children being given toys while the adults are talking, and then just something to keep us busy, the classic silence. Thank you so much for having this conversation. And it's so sad that Loveline wasn't able to join us. And the conversation we just had, especially around, mental health and the accessibility and inclusivity intersections really reminded me of Prof. Barnes and Dr. Garrett's words of like the importance of policy intervention. And I think we do need more of that. We need like a lot of young people like you to be really involved in like policy because policy influences so much that happens on the ground. And thank you. I hope you're gonna stick around for the questions though, because I really am confident that our audience have questions to ask. And thank you, Fatima. Are you still here?
Yes, I'm still here. I've been listening, and as you guys were speaking, I had so many questions, and it was really lovely to hear your experiences of the COP27 event. I think you are raising some really important points around accessibility and inclusion of young activists in Africa. And I find that having listened to your experience about having physically been removed, I think that that act really was disempowering. And so I would really like you and Wilson to maybe speak about these badges. What can COP do better to make youth from Africa more included? So that was my question. And if there's anyone else that would like to ask any questions, you guys can raise your hands and you can put it in the chat box. I'll read it out to Charlotte and Wilson and then they can address it. So that was my question to start off the questions.
Can you repeat the questions, Fatima?
So physically, I really loved your point where you raised the physical and the mental component. But physically, you were removed. Both yourself and Wilson both mentioned how you were physically removed because of something referred to as a party badge, and that goes directly back to the way in which the event was organized. So, from your experience and your knowledge, how can COP be better at being more inclusive and being more accessible to youth? What can they do better for you?
I That's a great question. I think it starts with transparency and acceptance of the fact that young people are the actually present leaders, not the observers of the dying leadership of the old. So we need transparency. That's the best thing or the bare minimum that the older people in leadership can do for us as young people.
I really love that phrase, present leaders, not observers. So if we can maybe ask Wilson what's his thoughts.
Yeah, just like Charlotte has said, transparency is important. I also feel that countries that are participating in the COP should really, start including the young people from the onset at home. they should start including the people in their countries first. That way, young people will be, more free to participate at COP because they'll have the support of their government, they'll have the support of their people, which will make it easier for them to participate in negotiations. For example, if I had, if I had people or leaders or negotiators from my country, Zambia, who had my back, who would who were willing to have me in their seats together to sit together with them, it would have been very much easier for me to participate in the negotiations. So I feel countries also need to include youth in their countries when it comes to negotiations, and as well as planning the NDCs, the national determined contributions that they're going to make at COP.
All right. Charlotte, you can go ahead.
I can hear you.
Oh, so just to say to Wilson, so you're saying that at the national level, before we go to an international level, there needs to be a reorientation about how we engage with youth. Wilson?
Yes, definitely, that's what I meant. At the national level, they need to have that orientation where it is decided on how they are going to be involved. Even when we go to an international conference like the COP, just can't they just can't let the on their own. Youth need it, and we need to feel uh, to be better able to better able participate at the Congress of Parties. We need to feel included to a certain group, and so if that group is our country, and if there is that support, it will be much easier to participate in elections as well as to have meaningful engagement.
So, Wilson, you and Charlotte have raised really some amazing points. I would like to open up for the attendees of this event to please ask questions that you think could help us drive the climate and environmental agenda for each of our countries. Also, we have people from various universities. Maybe if you can ask the presenters some questions and the host, if you have any, you can unmute and ask the question. I don't see any questions in the chat box currently. Okay. Sheila, if I may ask you, okay, so Prof. Barnes has a question. Wilson and Charlotte, what are your thoughts about the possibility for youth activists from marginalized groups from different parts of the world to mobilize before COP?
Um, I'll go first. The mobilization before COP, I think that's what happens every year, especially since COP26, that was back in 2021. We see young people from marginalized communities all over the world, from, you name it, from India, Philippines, Nigeria, all these places. These young people, they mobilize, but still the results are more or less the same every year.
Okay. Wilson?
Yes, so I also feel that there are possibilities of youth activism from marginalized groups, of marginalized groups mobilized, as well as to have discussions before the COP, but it's not as easy to get them all, to get them all in one place. It's not easy. The marginalized groups of people from Asia, um, America, North America, South America, as well as Africa, to kind of like be having meetings because of the lack, because it's not as easy to mobilize people into one place. So my suggestion would be marginalize groups of people from countries that have, contact with each other. It's really important to keep in touch before the COP, to discuss what they plan to do at the COP, as well as when at the COP, it's really important to make friendships as well as meet people from other marginalized groups so that next time it's much easier for a person or a group of people to interact with another group of people that they previously met.
Just also to add is the fact that whereas the mobilization helps and it happens all the time, which is quite effective and not effective at the same time, is that there is like the common restriction to constants that always are restrictive is the embassies. And the embassies, how they restrict is based on like, where are you coming from? You are an African, but where exactly in Africa are you coming from? Because, like, for example, a lot of young people from Nigeria, they experience this blockage in embassies all the time, which like Stockholm last year, it was so common and popular. The Bonn conference in Germany last year, this year, the same. The INC in Paris this year, the same. Like all these things, it all both sometimes it goes to like the embassy, like the policies around, or the governance around policy and migration that's also affects the movement and participation of young people from marginalized communities. And it's not just us as like, Africans, young Africans, and there's also the idea, the process of funding. You can have like funding and not have the visa, or have the visa and not have the funding. And while we are mobilizing enough action, sometimes the funds that are available are not realistically enough for everybody that's that wants to participate.
Charlotte and Wilson, you're bringing across some really, really important points here. You are saying that, firstly, marginalized youth and people from Africa, we do need to be included more often, but also there needs to be better support from leadership at all levels within provinces, within countries, but also there needs to be a re-looking at policy. So Wilson is mentioning very strongly that we really do need the people that are adults to be more inclusive of our youth, because like you said, Charlotte, and I really like that statement, present leaders and not observers. I think that you're making a very, very important point about there needs to be more funding, but and also addressing policy changes, because when we are going from Africa to international countries, like you said, Paris, Stockholm, Nigeria, etc., they are concerned that we want to remain in the country that is hosting us. So you saying leadership needs to change in addition to improvement in funding and also visa requirements. So thank you guys for that really important contribution. Are there any other questions? You have 1 more minute and then it is 1 o'clock. Are there any other questions from people in the panel and attending today? Okay, so there's another question. Charlotte and Wilson, how would you like to see the loss and damage discussions unfold? How do we move this along? What can we do better? What can leadership, COP, people addressing problems relating to climate change, what can be done better? How would you like to see the loss and damage discussions unfold?
Um, that's an important question. Uh, the loss and damage, in my perspective, and also uh, as a student in psychology or mental health, I think the loss and damage conversation needs to happen from the point of view of an individual breaking from the inside and trying to fight for help. If at least the people who are in charge of policy making understand that part of somebody suffocating and trying to call out for help and not being helped feels like people generally have experienced a certain experience like that. Depression, maybe anxiety, like you need help, but you can't find help. If that conversation happens through that lens, or maybe if that perspective is considered, perhaps they'll understand the urgency of why, health needs to be within the loss and and hello, can you still hear me? Oh yeah. So it's more like um building a house and that house does not have an escape plan for when there's fire. That's how I want loss and damage conversation to be like.
Charlotte, I don't know if it is my internet at home, but could you maybe repeat what it is that you had mentioned because I had missed out on some information. So I heard you saying that loss and damage needs to be more inclusive of mental health. Additionally, you associate the you're associating the lack of of addressing mental health as a house without a fire escape. So, is there anything else that I had missed out on that you had mentioned?
No, that was my ending point.
Okay, so that's really, really important. Just to give Wilson a chance, and then we have one more additional question. Wilson, would you like to address the loss and damage discussions? How can we move addressing these? How do we move this along? How can we address the loss and damage discussions?
Loss and damage discussions are a really touchy topics, especially to climate change, civil societies, because these are the loss and damage is something that the countries in global north promise to pay, but they're not paying. So I feel like we need to continue putting pressure because last year's COP saw a number of protests regarding loss and damage. Did they listen? Were there any actions taken to address loss and damage? We're still waiting for that. So I feel like civil societies and as young people, young activists, we really need to think more of ways on which we can address the issue of loss and damage because it seems as if the current actions that we're taking, they are not taking them seriously as to fulfill their their promises about loss and damage.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Wilson. So we have two additional questions. The first one is, are you affiliated with any national body, climate bodies? And the second question is, um, what type of help do you need from academics and professionals?
I think I'll go first again. Yes, I am affiliated with international organizations. Um, for example, the British Psychological Society, I think, um, and the Climate Psychology Alliance and Thread Media and Force of Nature. Two of them are youth led. And what do I need? What kind of help do I need from academic practitioners? I think it's guidance because you people in the academic, especially, you already have walked through so many steps that we as young people quite haven't seen. We're still trying to figure some of them we don't understand, but we see them every day. And also I think another help is maybe a seat, like being allowed a seat to just sit, with you guys at the table and allow us to try and fail without the consequences of, failure, but understanding that we are young people and we are starting out and we just want to learn and change where we can.
Thank you for that, Charlotte. Wilson, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, I am affiliated with for example, the Wildlife and Environmental Conservation Society of Zambia, as well as an international organization with UNICEF Zambia. And the kind of help I would require from is simply uh, more scientific information on climate change, as well as them to also help out in the climate change advocacy by including it into their lessons, discussions, or whatever they might be engaging themselves in.
Okay, so Charlotte, would you like to summarize, or Wilson, would you like to summarize?
Um, well, I think my summary, I would just say that as a young person, I understand that we have the energy to do so much, but we often don't have the understanding and guidance that we need. So, could you guys be our guidance? And thank you all for coming today.
Wilson, can you go ahead before we take Bontle's hand, and also I read out the comments for you in the group. Wilson, may you please go ahead?
So for me, in summary, I would say there's more to be done. There's more meaning as well as youth friendly. And I feel that as Africans, we should continue this and finding innovative ways that are climate change smart, as well as making sure that climate education is abundant for everyone, so that everyone has a say in what is affecting.
Okay. So, Wilson and Charlotte, thank you so much for everything that you are doing on the ground and for participating in this webinar. I'd like to reiterate what Dr. Hendricks is saying in the chat. She's saying, thank you so much for this insightful discussion. She appreciates your work, as do we all. You are welcome to contact her if you need any support. So that would be any type of support. She didn't mention anything specifically. Her email address is in the chat. It's lynnah@sun.acn.za. And then Bontley, you had your hand up. Would you like to ask a question?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Fatima, and good afternoon to everyone. I just wanted to say just a few statements. Thank you so much for this webinar, Wilson and Charlotte. I was surprised when you showed your face on the screen. You are my former student, and I must say, I am so happy to see you doing this wonderful work. And I'll also leave my email address in the chat box. I am available for for anything. If it's just a question, if it's to be invited to sit on a table, I would gladly invite you to any other events that are pertaining to climate change and also mental health. Thank you so much. You guys are doing such a wonderful work. I am glad that you are talking about the practicality of those policies and not just putting something on paper and not being and not seeing it being done. So thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so if I may make a summary, for me, having listened to this particular discussion between Charlotte and Wilson, you are emphasizing the importance of the people that are empowered to actually listen to youth more, because that experience of having been removed has had a negative impact on you. And though you might not actually have said it, but those that are in power needs to actually listen more. And for those of us that can do more, such as the Bonsley and Lynn and myself and Prof. Bonds, we do need to create more spaces for activists in South Africa and across Africa to actually enable you youth activists. And I'd like to challenge Charlotte. Charlotte, you, Wilson, and all the activists actually know more and you have experienced more. And I think that you should tell us what you want. So I'm looking forward to actually engaging with you, Charlotte and Wilson, and all people in this space more to find ways to help activists to actually take the power. Because, like you said, Charlotte, and I think both, I think the comment, you are the current leaders, and that is something that we do need to address as adults. So yes, very powerful discussion. And thank you so much, Charlotte. there were many things that we do need to speak about in the future, and I really appreciate your time. I know you and Wilson are extremely busy. And to all the people that have joined us today, thank you so much for actually attending. And we hope that we can actually move forward into the future and actually do a lot more together. So thank you everyone for being on the call and joining us. And thank you, Charlotte and Wilson, for everything. So with that, I say goodbye. Charlotte, you and Wilson can delete as well. That marks the conclusion. Charlotte, would you like to say bye?
Of course. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Ms. Winter, for coming. This is day made.
Okay. Bye, Wilson. Bye, Charlotte. Bye, everybody.